I'm not a fan of tabloid shows. The constant coverage of celebrity divorces and affairs isn't just uninteresting, it's bland. Yet, there was one occasion when I couldn't stop laughing. I'm Gina, 37 years old, working twice a week at a local cafe. My husband, Tony, is an ordinary office worker, a year older than me. We have one son, Nathan, who's a high school senior, currently in his rebellious phase. Though he doesn't share much, my son seems to have a goal, studying hard every day. He's not particularly academic, but I'm proud of his efforts. You might think ours is just a regular family. However, my husband had a rough past with money and women. He loved gambling, often spending his salary on it. On bad days, he'd come home for a meal. On good days, he'd lavish it on other women. After our marriage, he surprisingly quit gambling. Our child was born soon after, and I thought he had reformed. But change isn't that simple. I began to realize it after that accident happened. My father was involved in an unexpected accident, and since then, he has been living in a wheelchair. Gradually, something started to break down. My father was the president of a company with 300 employees. While the stereotype of a company president might be one of arrogance, that was never the case with my father. He was always kind. Despite his busy work schedule, he made time for family dinners every evening. On birthdays, he would bake homemade cakes each year. I was born when my father was 30, and he loved and cherished me deeply. The accident devastated me. Out of concern, my husband and I frequently visited the hospital. He asked me, "Are you okay, mother? It must be hard caring for your husband alone." "Thank you. Having you here is a relief. Sorry for the trouble." "It's no trouble. We're family, after all." "Thank you, truly." My husband seemed to care for my mother. But in hindsight, it was only her. My mother is what you might call a rags to riches success story. She's 10 years younger than my father. I remember hearing that my father fell in love with her at first sight when I was young. Indeed, she was very beautiful, and I recall feeling proud during school visit days. But wait. That pride lasted only until the early years of elementary school. As I got older, I became embarrassed by my mother's revealing clothes. When I overheard whispers like, "Whose mom is that?" LOL, I wanted to tell her to go home. A few days after my father was hospitalized, my husband said, "I'm going to visit him alone today." "Why?" "I'll come too." "Your mother seems to have something difficult to discuss that she can't tell you." "A problem she can't tell me?" "Yay, I'll go and see." With that, my husband went to visit my father alone. That day, for some reason, he didn't come back. The next day, when my husband returned, I asked him why he didn't come back. He only gave a vague response. "Your mother is going through a hard time." But it didn't end there. "I'm worried. She seems down. She says she can't even eat unless I'm there." These were the reasons my husband gave for visiting my mother. My husband returned with gifts each time he visited, saying, "She bought me a new watch as a thank you." Or "She got me a suit for work as a thank you for listening to her." He claimed these were presents of gratitude. Naturally, this made me angry, and I couldn't help but express my anger towards my husband. "My dad's in the hospital, and what are you doing? Aren't you worried about him?" "Of course, I'm worried. But I'm also concerned about your mother, right? I'm worried about Mom." "If you're just worried, there's no need to accept such gifts, right?" "I can't help it. Your mother insists on giving them to me." "Can't help it?" "What do you mean?" "That money you're spending is Dad's. You're not visiting Mom because you're worried. You're just pretending to be concerned to get something in return, right? Don't be ridiculous. I'm taking time off work to see her. There's nothing wrong with accepting a gift." That was when I remembered. That's the kind of person my husband is. After that, our conversations as a couple ceased. One day, when I visited Dad alone, I asked him, "Has Tony been visiting you recently?" "No, not at all. He's busy with work." "It can't be helped." "I see. And Mom?" "Your mother hasn't been visiting much either." "Is that so? But I'm happy that you and Nathan visit." "Eh? Nathan visits too?" "Ah, it was supposed to be a secret. Sometimes Nathan studies here because he's worried about his grandpa." "Nathan. But keep it a secret. If he knows I told you, he might not come anymore." "Yeah, I understand. Also, I heard from the nurse that you're being discharged tomorrow." "That's great. Yes, I still want to work. I can't stay here forever." "Don't overdo it, okay?" I know. Thank you." Learning about Dad's discharge and my son's visits lifted my spirits. But the good feeling didn't last long. The next day, I muttered to my husband, "Dad's getting discharged today. So I'm going to the hospital?" My husband glanced at me and just replied, I thought, what do you mean, But today was Dad's discharge day. I decided not to waste energy on a pointless argument and left for the hospital. When I arrived at Dad's room, my mother was nowhere to be seen. Where's Mom?" "She hasn't come. She said she would be here for the discharge." "Really?" "Yeah, I wonder what happened." I had a bad feeling. "I'll try calling." "No, it's fine. She must be at home. Maybe she's preparing a feast to celebrate my return." "All right, let's go home then." I returned home with my father, expecting to find my mother waiting there. "I'm home?" The house remained silent. "This house is big, isn't it?" "LOL, I'm home." Still, completely not a hint of sound. My mother was not there. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my son, Nathan, just back from cram school. "Mom, the stuff is gone." He was panicking. "What?" "The stuff is gone." "Whose stuff?" "Dad's." My heart almost stopped. After calming my panicked son, I ended the call. "What happened?" "Nothing, it's nothing." "It's not nothing. I'm your father. How many years do you think I've known you?" At that moment, I broke down and cried. The accumulated anxiety and pent-up emotions overflowed. My father stayed by my side in silence until I stopped crying. He was not just kind but also very strong. After I calmed down, we looked around the room together. While the large items like furniture were still there, some things were missing. Jewelry, a bank card, and the car. I couldn't, or rather didn't want to accept the reality that my mother had run away with another man, taking only the money. Without saying anything, she had left my father. "Go back to Nathan's place today." "Why, Dad? Why aren't you searching for Mom?" "No point in searching. What's done is done." "Why? You did so much for Mom." "Yes, maybe I did. But Mom ran away." "She abandoned you." "Yes, she did." "Aren't you angry? Aren't you sad?" "I feel anger and sadness." But what?" "Because she gave birth to Gina. And we have Nathan." Hearing this, I cried different tears than before. My father and son are my responsibility. Tears of resolve. I returned to my home and faced reality. My son, now in high school, was informed of everything that was happening. His expression clouded for a moment. But not for long. My son and I moved in with my father. We tried to forget my mother and husband and live happily. It wasn't easy from the start. But we cared for each other and helped each other through. When my son got into university, we celebrated with a trip to Hawaii. When my son started living alone, my father wanted to buy him an apartment. but we managed to stop him. When my son came of age, the three of us drank the most expensive liquor in our house and had a party. With every significant event in my son's life, we spent time together. 5 years of happiness passed. And then my father passed away quietly. My son and I cried more than ever before. What my father had left us was immeasurably valuable. We wanted to send him off quietly. But at the funeral home, a voice I thought I'd never hear again rang out. "Gina, long time no see." "It's been a while, Gina." It was my long-lost mother and husband. They must have heard about my father's passing. "Oh, Gina, you look well. It's a pity about your father." "Well, he was old, right? Why did you come?" "It's only natural for a wife to attend her husband's funeral, right?" "Yeah?" "Yes. I was worried about Gina." "You loved your father, didn't you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Please leave." "What are you saying to your mother who came all the way here?" "Mother? After you abandoned your husband in a wheelchair and took my husband. What kind of mother are you? How dare you show your face here?" "Don't be so angry. We have something important to discuss." "Important?" "There's nothing to discuss. It might not be important to you, but it is to me. It's about inheritance." "I came to discuss inheritance." "What?" "So, about inheritance. We're family, right? That's why I came to talk about it." Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh at the funeral home, even though I knew it was inappropriate. It was exactly as my father had said. I explained to the absurd couple, trying to contain my laughter. "There won't be any inheritance for you?" "Bree, why? We never filed for divorce, so it should be possible." "Mom, listen carefully." Dad had anticipated something like this might happen and left a will. "Bree, it states that all of Dad's inheritance will go to me and my son." "That's invalid." "It's not invalid. A liar was consulted and everything was done properly." "So, I won't get a single penny?" "That's right." "What about the company?" "What happens to the company?" "The same. The will states that the company is to be passed on to my son in the future." "You're lying." "Show me that will." "I'd rather not, in case it gets destroyed." "Wait a minute. We're still married. I have a right to inherit, don't I?" "Are you kidding me?" "Of course, you don't." "Why not?" "I don't want to discuss this any further. A liar will explain everything to you later, so please leave." Many people who admired my father were present at the funeral home. They looked at the two with disdain. Then, a liar, called by my son, hurried over. My son probably thought it was a hopeless case. As Tony turned his back to me, I said loudly, as if talking to myself, "Tony, please also fill out the divorce papers. You'll be hearing from the lawyer. Also, I will be requesting compensation for stolen money and goods from both of you. This will be the last time, but please don't ever come to see us again. We're strangers now." Even in death, my father continued to protect us, thanks to his will and the lawyer he had arranged. As for what happened next, my mother, who had assumed she would inherit, ended up penniless, with no experience in earning her own living. She couldn't find a job easily and spent her days at a job center. She was evicted from her previous residence for failing to pay rent, and now lives alone in a shabby apartment. Alone. Yes, my mother was spectacularly abandoned by Tony. His only reason for the affair and leaving was money. He stayed because of the luxury and the freedom to gamble. That was it. Now penniless and having lost her beauty, my mother was no longer needed by him. Mother was foolish. If she had valued my father, who cherished her so much, none of this would have happened. Utterly foolish. And the ex-husband? He quit his job soon after leaving and lived off my mother, with no savings, and now desperately looking for a job, mainly to pay compensation. However, the world is a small place. He's been turned away from job interviews everywhere. It's no surprise. No company associated with my father would employ him. No one extends a hand to someone who hasn't lived an honorable life. It's his own doing. Enough about those two. As for me, I still live in the house I shared with my father, leading a comfortable life. My son is working hard, hoping to take over my father's company. He often says he wants to be like his grandfather. It has been his goal since high school. I want my son to become a man like my father, but he still has a lot to learn. However, I believe he will get there. Inspired by my son, I've decided to fulfill my long-held dream of opening my own cafe. I'm busy every day learning about coffee and practicing baking cakes. When I bake, I remember the taste of the cakes my father made for my birthdays. They weren't incredibly delicious, but they were simple cakes full of love. I'm planning to make a cafe that serves such cakes. Dad, why are you ahead of her? My mother suddenly glared at me and blurted out. I was so startled that I couldn't say anything. I had wanted a child, and I thought my mother would be happy to have her first grandchild. However, my mother doted on my sister Magnolia, and she didn't seem to like that I got pregnant before Magnolia. My mother glared at my belly and made a shocking statement. I want Magnolia's child to be my first grandchild. You get abortion. My name is Sienna. I'm a 25-year-old housewife. I have a sister named Magnolia, who is 2 years older than me. We are close in age, and when we were kids, we used to play together and have a lot of fun. Our father cherished both of us, so I was happy. But there was one thing, and that was my mother. I still can't have a decent conversation with her. The reason for this is that she doted on Magnolia, who is good-looking and has treated me badly. My mother has a reputation for being a beauty in the neighborhood, and Magnolia was born with a beautiful face, looking a lot more like her than I was, so my mother cherished only Magnolia. Moreover, because Magnolia is the eldest, she has more new clothes and belongings. My mother would buy Magnolia lots of cute clothes and things and enjoy dressing her up, saying, "Magnolia looks so cute in everything, because she takes after me." When I saw that, I would often tell my mother, "I want one too. I want the clothes Magnolia is wearing." But my mother would reply, "What are you talking about? The things Magnolia wears wouldn't suit you, Sienna. Maybe something like this would suit you." And she'd give me a plain t-shirt and skinny jeans. When I was younger, I had more interest in cute things, so I used to cry a lot. When I did, my mother would say, "If you're going to cry, then leave." So I learned not to cry, and never asked my mother for anything again. I was feeling down, because I wanted to wear skirts and lacy dresses like the ones Magnolia wore. Magnolia wasn't aware of the situation, so she would say, "Sienna, your figure is so nice, and those slim jeans suit you so well." I'm really jealous. Hearing her compliment made me happy, and I quickly cheered up. Since I never complained to Magnolia about our mother, she seemed to think that I preferred simple clothing. However, sometimes Magnolia would ask me, "Sienna, come with me. Can I put together an outfit that showcases your great figure?" When I went with her, she dressed me in her own clothes, and said, "I think this would suit you too," and she had a lot of fun doing it, which made me happy. When it came to snacks and cakes, our mother gave Magnolia plenty, but never bought them for me. She had also put me on a strict diet, so I had been slim since I was little. I had never been praised for my face, so having a good figure was my only strength. I worked hard to maintain it through a healthy lifestyle. I continued wearing skinny jeans and tried to keep the good figure, to earn my mother's praise, but she still didn't pay me any attention. I talked to my father and Magnolia about it a few times, but I was too young, and couldn't explain my situation well, so it didn't solve the problem fundamentally. When I said, "I want to do things just like Magnolia does," my father, looking puzzled, would buy us snack and tell us to share. Magnolia herself sometimes put together outfits for me, but our sizes were different, so I couldn't wear them outside. These were only temporary solutions, and that wouldn't change my mother's treatment toward me. In fact, when we were alone, she would often yell at me like a raging fire. She treated me well in front of Magnolia and my father, because she wanted to be a good mother and a good wife to them. I was told that every mother naturally favors the first child she gave birth to, and I tried to convince myself of that, even though it was hard. However, as I went to middle school and high school, I realized that my environment was not normal. Through conversations with those around me. When I was at home, it was not enjoyable being alone with my mother, as she was always mean, so I actively participated in club activities. My circle of friends expanded, and I made friends with whom I would hang out even on days when there was no school. I had only seen my friends in their school uniforms, so I was astonished when I saw them in their casual clothes. They were all incredibly fashionable and radiant. They would say things like, "My mom bought these clothes and a bag for me the other day. Aren't they cute?" With smiles on their faces. I couldn't keep up with my friends and initially felt sad. However, when I mustered the courage to confide in a concerned friend, she said, "Sienna, your mom is mean. That's terrible." It was the first time I realized that something was wrong. My friend couldn't bear to see me upset and said, "Well then, look forward to your birthday present." She gave me a lovely makeup set. It became a cherished memory that I still can't forget, but from that moment, I was determined to distance myself from my mother. It was still early summer of my freshman year, but I informed my family that I would move out when I graduate from high school. My mother said, "I don't think a high school graduate is going to do well in life." Well, fine. Magnolia can go to a good college and I can spend a lot of money for her in that case. I promised myself that I would prove my independence. I remembered my mother's hurtful words when I felt discouraged, and that became my driving force. I realized that even if I didn't have good looks, I could still be recognized at work, and that brought me a sense of fulfillment. Fortunately, I met my current husband at my workplace. He listened without a single frown when I talked about my family, especially my mother, and he accepted everything about me. With the full support from my father and Magnolia, we got married. My mother, who puts on a good front, didn't oppose us at the time and accepted our marriage. Later, I became pregnant. While I was very happy about it, I was unsure about how to announce it to my family. I especially thought my mother would be indifferent if I told her, but maybe she would dote on her first grandchild if she saw them. I hoped this would be an opportunity to build a good mother-daughter relationship with her. After much contemplation, I gathered the courage to inform my family. I wasn't sure if I can do it alone, so I had my husband and sister-in-law accompany me. We rang the doorbell at my parents' house. Yes. The first to appear was Magnolia. "Sienna. Long time no see. How have you been? Dad just went out, but he should be back soon. Come on in." Magnolia behaved cheerfully towards me, just like in the old days, and warmly welcomed me. She also greeted my husband and sister-in-law politely and escorted us to the living room. On the other hand, my mother's expression was tense when she saw my face, but as soon as she realized my husband and sister-in-law were with me, she put on a forced smile. I did not miss such a change in my mother's expression. My mother, who was good at keeping up appearances, acted like a good mother in front of my husband and sister-in-law. She said, "Thank you for coming all the way here. Please have this with Sienna." As she handed my husband a gift, I glanced at the contents of the bag. I'm not a fan of sweets, but there were plenty of sweet snacks and treats in there. When we went to announce our marriage, my husband mentioned that he liked sweets, and it seemed like my mother remembered that. She said, "Have it with Sienna," even though there was nothing I could eat. I thought it was the same as always, but I didn't mind anymore. My mother intentionally said, "Oh, I forgot. You don't like sweets, do you?" "Sorry. But when you live together, you sometimes have no choice but to put up with it, right? After she looked at me, she said this with a smile to my husband. Hearing that, I knew she deliberately put a large quantity of sweets. My husband quickly responded with a smile. I think who you eat with is more important than what you eat. Sienna and I enjoy each other's company, even if we eat different things. My mother replied, "Ah, I see," and took a seat. Once everyone was seated, I made my announcement. The reason why I came here today is because I have something to tell you all. I'm actually pregnant. Even though it wasn't bad news, I unconsciously closed my eyes. Open your eyes, Sienna. When I heard Magnolia's voice, I opened my eyes. I'm so glad. Congratulations. Magnolia said loudly, tears of joy streaming down her face. My mother, although surprised, said, "Congratulations." She seemed pleased in front of my husband and sister-in-law, but her eyes didn't match her smile. I tried to avoid looking at my mother as much as possible, and continued talking with Magnolia. Have you had any worries since getting pregnant? If you encounter any problems, be sure to let me know, and I'll come right away. Magnolia thoughtfully offered. Thanks to her, I gradually relaxed. It was around lunchtime, and I started feeling hungry. Although I wanted to stay a bit longer, I decided to leave to have lunch. Then Magnolia said, "Wait a moment," and hurried to the kitchen. In no time, she whipped up a feast. It's a gift from me. You seemed hungry, so please eat, she said, serving me generously. I hadn't had such a lavish homemade meal in a while, so I ended up eating more than I expected. Everything is delicious. Thank you, I told Magnolia. Magnolia replied, it was a pregnancy announcement from my beloved sister. We need to celebrate in a grand manner. Magnolia is so skilled at cooking. She'll make a great wife when she gets married. My mother praised Magnolia as usual. When my sister-in-law heard this, she complimented me as much as my mother did to Magnolia. I see. Both sisters are great at cooking. Sienna is also an amazing cook, and her food is delicious. I focused on enjoying Magnolia's cooking, ignoring my mother. After a while, my husband got up to use the bathroom, and after that, his work phone rang, so he stepped outside. My sister-in-law asked, Sienna, I'm going to the bathroom, but do you want to go first? Being considerate, but I didn't need to go, so I urged her to go ahead. Magnolia also left to make some tea. I became alone with my mother and I felt uncomfortable, but I tried to maintain a calm composure as much as I could. When she confirmed that no one was nearby, my mother's expression instantly turned stern, and she muttered, "Why are you pregnant?" Before Magnolia? I was shocked, and I couldn't say anything. In the next moment, my mother said, I want Magnolia's child to be my first grandchild. You get abortion. She then kicked my belly with all her strength. Ouch! That hurts. The force of her kick and the intense pain made me cry out. My husband heard my scream and rushed over. Sienna, are you okay? He asked. But I remained huddled on the floor, unable to respond properly. My sister-in-law then said, this is worrying. Let's call an ambulance right away. She quickly arranged for an ambulance. Thank you, both of you, I said with all the strength I could muster. They asked my mother how this happened. Then my mother said, oh, come on now. Both of you, calm down. Are you saying I did something? She is clumsy, so she suddenly stood up and bumped her belly on the dresser. That's all. And tried to shift the blame onto me. I began to feel anger rising within me as my mother tried to lighten the mood in that situation. However, the intense pain in my stomach prevented me from uttering a word. Even though I wanted to say that there is no way that I would bump my belly into a dresser, just because I am clumsy, all I could do was crouch down in pain. At that moment, Magnolia entered the room, stomping her feet, and said, Mom, I saw everything. You kicked Sienna's belly. She grabbed our mother's collar. She had always been very kind to me, so seeing her this angry was a first. She confronted our mother with incredible intensity. Everyone in the room froze, and our mother remained passive. Magnolia looked at me and said, "Sienna, I'm truly sorry. I was bringing some tea, so I couldn't come to you fast enough. I was watching Mom's reaction, since your husband and his sister came to you. But then you kept lying. I won't forgive you. I saw you kick Sienna's belly." While gripping our mother's collar, Magnolia continued, and our mother tried to smooth things over. "Seriously, Magnolia, you are always so dramatic when you get worked up. I would never do such a thing. Besides, there's no evidence, right?" I mustered my last bit of strength and said to her, "Mom, you kicked my belly." Then, Magnolia shook our mother while accusing her, "You put Sienna and the baby in danger. What are you going to do if something happens to them?" While feeling bewildered by the argument between my mother and Magnolia, I was grateful to Magnolia. At that moment, the sharp, throbbing pain in my abdomen hit me repeatedly, and I murmured, "It hurts." Magnolia, looking startled, immediately released our mother and rushed to my side, offering her support. The ambulance arrived, and I was taken to the hospital. Because there was a crack in my bone, I had to be admitted immediately, but both the baby and I were fine. Magnolia accompanied me in the ambulance and stayed by my side. When I told my husband and sister-in-law later that everything was all right, they came to visit, and they shed tears of joy. Magnolia even said, "I'll come every day because I'm worried." During the time I was in the hospital, the three of them visited me every day, and we had a fun time together. My mother's misdeed became known to my father, and he contacted me to see if I was okay. Later, he forcibly brought my mother to the hospital, where she continued to claim I didn't do it. They just want to be mean to me and frame me. However, the doctor explained that my abdominal injury was not caused by bumping into something, but by a strong force applied from the outside, and that circumstantially, I was kicked hard by a person. My father said, "As a mother, and as a human being, you've disappointed me." Finally, my mother apologized to me, although her expression clearly showed she had no real remorse, and was apologizing because she had no other choice. After being discharged from the hospital, I decided to tell my father and Magnolia everything that my mother had done to me. What my mother had done consisted of hurtful words, insults, and had always been hidden from my father and Magnolia, so they had never been aware of it. They had been completely oblivious, and since they had always admired my mother, I had never been able to talk about it before. Sorry for not noticing it when I've been watching you the closest. Everything Mom said to me about what you liked was a lie, right? Like the clothes and stuff, Magnolia said, feeling down. My father also responded, "I've been a failure as a parent. Sienna, I'm truly sorry. From now on, don't hesitate to rely on me." He apologized. I quickly replied, "Magnolia, Dad, this doesn't change the fact that you've always cared for me. That alone makes me happy enough." We then embraced, the three of us, while shedding tears. Afterward, they decided to cut ties with my mother, and advised me to report her to the police. Upon hearing this, my mother pleaded with me, "Please, I beg you, just don't involve the police. I'll apologize as much as you want me to, so please forgive me. Only you can persuade them." She went into a frenzy, asking me to intervene, but I knew that deep down, my mother just didn't want to be separated from my father and Magnolia. She didn't show an ounce of remorse for what she had done. Her only concern was avoiding a criminal record, which would tarnish her image as a good mother and wife. When I firmly refused, she started hurling insults. "Have you forgotten gratitude to me for raising you? You're plain and slow-witted, yet you dare to act all high and mighty." She even attempted to physically attack me, but my father and husband, who had been quietly observing, restrained her. My husband declared, "No matter what you try, we will protect Sienna." My mother couldn't bear the situation where I, whom she always looked down on, was now being protected by those around me, and cried out, "If Magnolia is so important to you, why did you have me?" I asked a question I had been pondering for years, but she only cried, saying that she was tricked by her ungrateful daughter. I was sure that nothing would be resolved like this, so I headed straight to the police station. When I went to the police to seek help, they were initially hesitant. "It's a family matter. You should try to handle it yourselves." However, when I brought a lawyer with me, the process became smoother. In the end, my mother was kicked out of the house with no money and arrested. In the meantime, my father finalized the divorce proceedings and sold the family home to ensure that my mother couldn't return. Just before moving, my father, Magnolia, and I spent some quality time together, reminiscing about our memories in that house. I haven't told my mother where I live, so my father and Magnolia moved to a place close to our home. When my mother returned and found out that nobody was at the family home, she called me incessantly. I didn't want to talk to her ever again, so I let it go to voicemail and listened to her message later. In a frantic voice, my mother said, "I've been arrested, so you should be satisfied now. How far are you going to push me? You don't need to take everything away from me. I'll definitely find you, so be prepared." I felt a genuine sense of fear, so I changed my phone number. Peaceful days returned, and with the support from everyone, I was able to live a stress-free life. And the day I give birth to my child has come. My whole family was there to witness it, and I gave birth to a healthy baby. Wah! When the baby cried for the first time, everyone rejoiced. "Sienna, you did a great job." My relationship with my mother wasn't great, but I once again felt lucky to have my father, Magnolia, my husband, and sister-in-law, who cared about me so much that they almost make me forget about my mother. With another precious addition to our family, our life would become even livelier. I made a promise to myself to shower this child with the love and affection I couldn't receive from my own mother. "Sienna, you should be the first one to hold the baby." Prompted by Magnolia, I held my child for the first time. I was surrounded and blessed by everyone, by the side of my baby who was sleeping peacefully. I am going to do my best as a mother, so that this happy life will continue for many years. I, Lisa, tied the knot last year with Harry, my boyfriend of 3 years. We first met on social media. It all began when Harry, a friend of a friend, liked a photo of me and started following me. He's 2 years younger and works as a software engineer. Though he's in tech, he's also a great communicator and seemed to be recognized as a rising star at his company. On our second anniversary, Harry proposed. It was a truly simple proposal. At our favorite local Italian restaurant, just before dessert, he began. "I have something to say." Curious, I waited and then he said, "Will you marry me?" Presenting a ring. It was a straightforward proposal, but it deeply moved me. Of course, I immediately replied, "Yes, I'd love to." Later, I learned from Harry that before we even started dating, during a casual drink with friends, the topic of ideal proposals came up. I had mentioned wanting something simple and he remembered it all along. Afterwards, we held our engagement party at a hotel in New York. That's when I first met Harry's family. He has his parents and an older sister, who's 6 years his senior and was also planning to get married soon. Harry, standing at 5 feet 6 inches, is on the shorter side for a guy. His entire family is also quite petite. On the other hand, I'm tall for a woman at 5 feet 5 inches. My mom, a former model, is even an inch taller than me. And my dad stands tall at 5 feet 10 inches. I couldn't help but feel a bit concerned about our height differences. I've always been attracted to shorter guys, usually around 5 feet 3 inches. Conversely, Harry has a thing for taller women, so we were a perfect match in that sense. Our engagement party, however, lacked a certain spark. Later, I found out that Harry's mother and sister had been criticizing my family and me. After that meeting, we got married in August, 3 months later. Instead of a lavish ceremony, we just wanted a casual, fun gathering with friends. So, we simply held a wedding announcement party. This didn't sit well with Harry's mother and sister. When we visited Harry's family home after the wedding, they openly showed their displeasure. It was summer and I wore a yellow floral sleeveless dress with heeled sandals. They began, "Could you not wear something like that to someone's house?" "I'm so sorry, I'll go change right away." Feeling I'd made a mistake, I rushed home to change. When I returned, Harry's mother criticized the bombkichin cake I brought. "Who wants to eat such a thing in this heat? Normally, people bring cooler-looking, refreshing desserts, don't they?" I had chosen the bombkichin because it's delicious when chilled. "You really don't think things through. I guess your model mother couldn't teach you better. Just because you have a small face doesn't mean you have a big brain. Looks aren't everything, especially in our family. We value consideration, not like your family that only cares about appearances." I was shocked to hear them speak about my mother and father this way. I looked to Harry for support, but he seemed lost in thought. On our way home, Harry began, "About what my mom and sister said earlier?" "Yeah. I never expected them to act like that. They had made some comments after the engagement party, but I thought they'd come around. I'm really sorry." "It's okay. We'll get to know each other better over time." "Probably. Yeah, but I never thought they'd be like that." I was naive. "Don't worry about it. Accepting someone new into the family can be challenging." At that time, knowing Harry cared was enough for me. I don't want to be taken advantage of by someone else, and I just need to take the time to build a relationship of trust. One day, Harry's sister messaged him, saying she and her husband wanted to visit our home. So, on a Saturday afternoon, they were scheduled to come over. "I have to work this Saturday. Can you handle him alone?" Harry had asked his sister to reschedule, but she insisted on that day. "Yeah, I'll take care of everything." And so, on Saturday, Harry's sister and her husband arrived. "Please make yourselves at home. We're here to see if you're living properly." After I quickly cleared the tea and cake, my sister-in-law said, "All right, let's see your place," and hurried off to the bedroom. To my shock, she started opening my closet without asking. "Please don't go through my closet without permission." "Why not?" "I came to see if you're living properly." "Who knows? Maybe you just shove everything in there without cleaning." "That's not true." Then, she began taking pictures of the closet's contents with her phone. "Hey, what are you doing? Don't take pictures without asking." "My mom asked me to. She wanted photos." It was so rude. She checked every drawer, even commenting on the color of my underwear, took pictures of the dresser's contents, the bathroom cabinet, and even under the kitchen sink. She meticulously photographed the living room cabinet where we keep our valuables. No matter how many times I asked her to stop, she continued taking pictures throughout the house. In the living room, she noticed our high-end brand TV, a gift from my parents, and remarked with a hint of disdain, "You have a pretty nice TV." She then snapped a photo and said to her husband, who had been silently following her, "We need to step up our game." That night, after my husband returned from work, I told him everything. I couldn't help but cry a little. We might need to set some boundaries. My dad has been giving me some intel, too. Really? Just wait and see. In April, it had been 5 years since my husband's grandmother passed away, so there was a family gathering. Since we didn't have a wedding, this was my first time meeting my husband's extended family. His family originally moved from Atlanta, and the gathering was held there. Of course, most of the relatives live in Atlanta. The gathering was overwhelming. There were so many relatives and it was hard to remember everyone. My mother-in-law, probably on purpose, didn't introduce me to anyone. I asked my husband to introduce me. However, everyone seemed to sense the tension, and their reactions were lukewarm at best. My sister-in-law, trying to show off, deliberately chatted happily with the relatives in front of me. When I looked lost, she swooped in and said, "She's so clueless. All she cares about is her looks. Come on, help out." My mother-in-law joined in, treating me as the clueless daughter-in-law. Time passed and my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed no signs of improving. One day, in early fall, my mother-in-law suggested a family trip. She wanted to go to Boston since the Acela Express passed through there. Everyone agreed, and it was decided that my father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, husband, and I would go. My brother-in-law couldn't join due to work. I was looking forward to the trip in September, when the weather was cooler. However, I was worried about being harassed by my mother-in-law and sister-in-law during the trip. But this time, my husband would be with me. I had never been to Boston, so I was excited. We planned to use a long weekend for the trip. On the day, while my husband and father-in-law were buying snacks, my mother-in-law suddenly said, "Oh no, I think I left my glasses at the cafe we were at earlier." "The cafe upstairs?" "Yes, can you go get them?" Which store is that?" "Isn't there an area on the second floor where there are several stores lined up?" "It's a self-service cafe over there." "But our train is leaving soon, isn't it?" "That's why I'm asking you to hurry." "But do you expect me to go through the trip without my glasses?" "I didn't mean. Just go." Reluctantly, I ran off to find her glasses. There's no way I'd make it back in time for the train. I ran as fast as I could. "We've got the snacks. Let's hurry. Let's go." "Where's Lisa?" "She said she needed the restroom and went ahead." "All right, let's hurry then." By the time I returned from the cafe on the second floor, having confirmed there were no forgotten glasses, the Ocelot Express had already departed. I knew it. From the start, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had planned to leave me behind. On second thoughts, as I was processing this, my mother-in-law called. "We've already left," she said, her voice dripping with glee. But I retorted, "Yes, I'm aware. Take care." "What?" What did she say? From the other end, I could hear my sister-in-law. "She's acting tough, saying take care or something." Poor thing, left behind and still trying to act strong. Just before the call ended, I overheard my husband and father-in-law saying they were going to the restroom. About 20 minutes later, the Ocelot Express arrived at New London Station. "Where are the guys?" "They're taking a while. Maybe they stopped for a beer." In reality, my husband and father-in-law had gotten off the train. Unbeknownst to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, they returned to Metro Park Station, paid for round-trip tickets, and met up with me. Our real destination for this trip was Washington, D.C. My father-in-law had informed me of the scheme my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had planned. He was furious at their constant harassment. He once confronted them, saying, "Enough of this nonsense. Lisa is a good person and important to Harry." But they dismissed it. "Dad, you're just blinded by her looks. Men are so easily deceived." They didn't even try to listen to their father-in-law's opinion. Their ill intentions continued, and my father-in-law decided a harsh lesson was needed. So, he and my husband hatched a plan to leave them behind instead. On the contrary, my plan is to leave my mother-in-law and sister-in-law behind. Thus, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were left on the Acela Express. Likely, not realizing until they reached Boston. They probably didn't bring much money, expecting my father-in-law to cover all expenses. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were in for a tough time. They had no hotel to stay in. My husband had taken care of the travel arrangements, and he had canceled the Boston hotel reservation the day after booking it. With little cash on hand, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were definitely in a bind. They won't get it unless we teach them a lesson like this. They're adults. They'll find their way back somehow. My father-in-law, my husband, and I enjoyed some snacks we just bought on the Acela Express heading to Washington. Yes, the two of them going to buy snacks was actually part of our plan. We arrived in Washington before evening. Throughout the journey, there were several messages from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to my father-in-law and husband, but both of them ignored them completely. The three of us thoroughly enjoyed Washington. It's more fun without those two. I was trying not to say that. Both Harry and my father-in-law were in high spirits, making such comments. We had a relaxed trip without cramming too much sightseeing. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who were left behind on the Acela Express, they got off at Boston South Station and waited for my father-in-law and husband, but they never showed up. They realized something was off, but it was too late. They frantically messaged my father-in-law and husband, but there was no response since they had decided to ignore them. They finally realized they had been left behind and headed to the hotel. But the hotel reservation had been cancelled the day before. They went to the nearest restaurant and checked how much money they had. Both had relied on my father-in-law's wallet during the trip, so they hardly had any cash and didn't even bring credit cards. Together, they had about $150, just enough for a cheap hotel and a late-night bus ride home. But they couldn't even have a decent meal. They tried to book a bus for that night, but it was already full. So, they reluctantly booked a bus for the next night. For about a day and a half, they couldn't eat properly. They shared a biscuit they bought at the station. They kept messaging my father-in-law and husband, but of course, there was no reply. It seemed like my mother-in-law and sister-in-law no longer had the energy to bother me. For dinner, they bought cereal at a grocery store and ate it in their hotel room. "Mom, what's going on?" "I don't know." "Isn't it your father's doing?" "Who's the mastermind?" "But this is too much, isn't it?" The next day, they went without food or drink and waited until night to board the bus. Apparently, I had a ton of messages and missed calls from them. I had blocked them, so I only noticed later. The next morning, the bus arrived in New York. They slept until the evening. By the time they woke up, my father-in-law, my husband, and I had returned from Washington. I went back to our apartment first, and my husband went to his parents' house with his father. We knew from messages that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had somehow made it back. As soon as they got home, they confronted my father-in-law and husband. My husband and I were on standby, called by my father-in-law. "What's the meaning of this? We had very little cash and went through so much." "We did it because you two planned to leave Jamie behind." "So, Harry and I planned to leave you two behind." "But that's cruel." "It's her fault." She pointed at me. I wasn't sure how to react, so I just smiled. "I am so pissed." "Stop smiling." My sister-in-law threw her bottled tea at me. But my father-in-law deflected it with a chop, and it hit my mother-in-law's forehead. Ouch! I struggled to hold back my laughter. "Haven't you two learned your lesson?" My father-in-law shouted. "Mom, sis, stop this. It's embarrassing." My husband laughed. "What's embarrassing?" "She's the embarrassing one." "Enough. If you keep this up, I'll divorce you." "What? Divorce?" My mother-in-law turned pale. "Sis, Mom, just stop, or I'll get really mad." The word divorce completely demoralized my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. "It's because of you two that this happened. Just accept it." My mother-in-law and sister-in-law finally broke down in tears. "Father, Harry, it seems they're truly remorseful. Please forgive them. I never wanted things to end this way. Please, I beg you." I pleaded with my father-in-law and husband. "Jamie, we're so sorry." And there, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law vowed never to harass me again and apologized for everything they had done. Thanks to me, talks of divorce and disownment were off the table. Little did they know, this was all part of my plan. The one who seemed the most excited when we hatched this plan was my father-in-law. But that's a secret. Half a year has passed since then. Recently, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have started treating me normally. Now, the three of us even go shopping and visit cafes together. I finally felt accepted as a part of the family. Next year, I hope to go on a Boston trip with the entire family. This time, without any. Don't live luxuriously on your husband's money. The comment from my mother-in-law, Wendy, freezes the atmosphere at the 60th birthday celebration I organized for my mom. In the midst of this, "All right, let's split the bill then," my usually calm mom says. Wendy looks stunned and lets out a confused, "Huh?" My name is Layla, and I'm 37 years old. I quit my full-time job when I got married 2 years ago, and now work part-time while supporting my husband, Walker. Life was great until last month when we started living with Wendy. The reason? My father-in-law passed away. He died of cancer 3 months ago, leaving Wendy to live alone. Wendy felt scared and lonely living by herself, so we moved into Walker's family home. Before we got married, Walker had told me, "I'm an only child, so I'll have to take care of my parents. I want to be there for them, especially if they need caregiving." Wendy is a kind person, so I agreed to live with her in the future, even offering to help with caregiving. She never interfered in our marriage, and she was a great homemaker when my father-in-law was alive. I respected her and thought I was lucky to have such a good mother-in-law. So we started living together earlier than planned. I was looking forward to a happy life as a family of 3, but I never expected Wendy to turn out the way she did. A month into living together, we started to feel more comfortable around each other. "Hey, Layla, I want to eat hamburgers for dinner tonight. Can you make some?" I often get dinner requests like this. "Sure, let's have hamburgers for dinner tonight." Some mothers-in-law apparently won't eat anything their daughters-in-law cook. Wendy enjoys my cooking. She never complains about my cleaning or laundry either, making it easy for me to manage the household. "I'm really glad we're living together, Layla." She even says, making me feel fulfilled. It makes me happy to be praised by someone I respect. However, I sometimes wonder why Wendy doesn't do any housework. She praises me, but never lifts a finger herself. She leaves her dishes in the sink and doesn't even take her trash out. It's like living with a traditional dad. On top of that, if you eat sweets, leave the garbage on the spot. When I clean, I find crumbs everywhere, presumably from snacks Wendy has eaten. Wendy lives on the inheritance and survivor benefits from my late father-in-law. Walker gave all the inheritance to Wendy, saying, "My mom put up with my dad's wimps all her life." I didn't quite understand, but it's not my place to get involved in their financial matters. As long as they're both okay with it, I thought it was fine. But when Wendy spends her days doing nothing, living off my late father-in-law's inheritance and survivor benefits, it starts to bother me. I wish she'd at least clean up after herself. She used to be so good at housework when my father-in-law was alive. Why has she become so careless now? Curious, I gently asked Wendy about it. My husband was a very strict man, and I couldn't defy him. Now that he's gone, I'm finally free. It turns out my father-in-law was a henpecked husband, and Wendy felt she couldn't go against him. I remember how he used to sit during meals, ordering Wendy around. Was that what it was? Now I understand what Wendy meant, and I can't help but feel sorry for Wendy. I'll take care of the housework from now on, I decide, considering Wendy's feelings. But then, Wendy starts making more and more demands. "Can you take a day off from your part-time job today? I want you to drive me to my friend's place." I can't take a day off. I firmly decline, and she says, "Is your pocket money that important to you?" Excuse me? I can't believe what I'm hearing. Spending money? I work part-time for the family, not for pocket money. Considering we've just started living together and will continue to do so, I don't voice my complaints. "Hey, we're out of milk. Can you go buy some now? I can't start my day without milk. Can't you see I'm about to leave for work? If you hurry, you won't be late." Hey, Layla, my trash can is full. Take it out, and while you're at it, vacuum and mop my room. It's getting dirty. Wendy starts taking advantage of my willingness to do housework without complaining. This is too much. I gently tell Wendy what I can't do. I'm telling you to do it, so do it. Why can't you? She gets furious. I'm at my wit's end and decide to consult Walker. Seriously? I'm sorry. Walker apologizes and immediately scolds Wendy. Mom, you should take care of yourself. Unlike Layla, who works part-time, you're home all day. But Wendy just brushes it off. Yeah, I get it. She clearly doesn't. I start to feel uneasy about this living arrangement. Walker seems to sense my feelings. I'll take care of Mom as much as I can. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. I feel relieved by Walker's words. And true to his word, Walker starts dealing with Wendy's whims. But Wendy isn't happy about it. Why is Walker doing this? Layla, as his wife, you should be the one doing these things. Walker is the breadwinner, and you're just a part-timer. You think it's okay to make a tired Walker do this? Come on, Layla, wash my dishes right now. At this, Walker is furious. Hey, Mom, stop making Layla do everything. If you're going to talk like that, shouldn't you, who does nothing all day, be the one doing the housework? He has a point. But Wendy is angered by Walker's words. What are you talking about? Your father always told me a wife must take care of the family. A wife must obey her husband. Now that he's gone, I'm not anyone's wife. And I'm the head of this household. That means Layla, as your wife, should be taking care of me. Is Wendy still bound by my father-in-law's words? I can't hold back and argue with her. Wendy, times have changed. These days, no one thinks that way about wives and husbands. You need to change your mindset. Walker nods in agreement. But Wendy's face turns red with anger. What are you saying? Are you calling me outdated? How dare you, as a wife, say such terrible things to me? I'm shocked. Then Wendy continues to vent her anger at me. The only reason I taught you how to do housework was so you could do it all when we lived together. I agreed to live with you because I wanted an easier life after all the hardships I've endured. Even Walker is surprised by her revelation. Look, I get it that you've had a tough mom. But it's not okay to treat Layla like a slave. And it's not okay to move in with us for such a selfish reason. Exactly. Wendy has no comeback. Enough. I'm disappointed that you're siding with her over your own mother. She storms off to her room and slams the door. Walker and I sigh. Layla, I'm really sorry. You don't want to live like this, do you? I nod slightly. Then comes a surprising suggestion. Should we stop living together? What? I never thought he'd suggest that. I didn't expect Mom to become so selfish after Dad passed away. But we can't keep living like this. Let's move. I'm happy to hear this. But moving now is a concern. In fact, my mom's 60th birthday celebration is just around the corner. And I'm the one organizing it. I've just bought an expensive gift for her. Wanting to give something special back to the woman who raised me. Moving would be another big expense. When I mention this, Walker also looks troubled. Plus, we've just moved here, and Walker's savings have taken a hit. Moving now would be difficult. But we can't put up with Wendy anymore. We ponder what to do, but can't find an answer. In the end, we put the moving idea on hold. And so we continue to endure Wendy's whims and clashes. The stress is piling up, and we're both exhausted. In the midst of this, my mom's 60th birthday celebration is approaching. It's next month, huh? As Walker and I discuss the celebration, Wendy joins the conversation. What's happening next month? We proceed to explain. So please, have dinner alone that day. I'll prepare the meal for you." When I said that, Wendy, as usual, made a selfish demand. "I'm coming too." "You're coming too?" I couldn't understand why Wendy, who had only met my mom a few times, would say that. Walker seemed to feel the same way and asked her, a bit annoyed. "Hey, why would you come, Mom?" "It's for Layla's mom's 60th birthday celebration." Then came an incomprehensible reply. "Well, I never got a 60th birthday celebration from Layla. So you should celebrate me too." What? Neither of us could make sense of it. Wendy is 63, and when we first met, she was already past 60. Yet she's demanding a celebration? Walker couldn't understand her logic either and kept arguing. "This is ridiculous." But Wendy wouldn't budge, insisting. "I'm going. Celebrate me too." So they kept arguing. This was getting nowhere. "Fine. If my mom agrees, then Wendy can come too." I called my mom. "Would it be okay if Walker's mom also joins the 60th birthday celebration?" My mom graciously said, "Sure." Yay. Then I'm coming to the 60th birthday celebration. This is turning into a hassle. Walker and I exchanged glances, both probably thinking the same thing. But we had no idea what was coming. Little did we know that Wendy's selfishness would escalate even more on this particular day. On the day of the 60th birthday celebration, we headed to my parents' house by train. "Why are we taking the train, Layla? What happened to the car?" "I hate trains. My mom loves her alcohol, and the plan was for everyone to drink. That's why we couldn't drive." When I explained, Wendy looked displeased. "Well, you could just abstain from drinking, Layla. I'll drink your share too. So get off the train now and go rent a car." "I can't do that. My mom is looking forward to drinking with me," I said, refusing her demand. She kept grumbling. "It's not like the train ride was that long. It's only about 20 minutes from our house to my parents'." Despite feeling embarrassed by her loud complaints on the train, Walker and I finally arrived at my parents' home. We were greeted by my mom, who then said hello to Wendy. "Layla is always in your care. I hope she's not causing any trouble." Wendy laughed and responded in a way that was completely out of line. "She's always a handful. She does the housework I've taught her, but she's so busy trying to make extra money that she sometimes doesn't listen. But hey, she's the wife Walker brought home." Walker immediately scolded Wendy. "Mom, what are you saying?" My mom and I were stunned. Ignoring that she wasn't even a family member, Wendy led the way into the house. "You're having a hard time living with her, aren't you?" My mom whispered this to me so Wendy couldn't hear. I could only respond with a wry smile. When we got to the living room, the catering we had ordered was already there. I had told my mom, "You don't have to do any of the serving or cleaning." So Walker and I started setting the table. "Why are you making Walker do this? You should do it yourself." I couldn't believe she would say something like that here, too. Walker was visibly frustrated, while my mom quietly observed. "Wow, this looks delicious. I didn't expect to eat such a feast. I'm glad I came all this way for this 60th birthday celebration." She's a guest in someone else's home, yet she acts like this? Does she have no common sense? The celebration began with a toast. My own father passed away 4 years ago. Wendy used that as a topic to steer the conversation. "Your husband passed away, too, right? Isn't life great living off the inheritance and survivor's pension?" "I've been having a blast since my husband passed." I couldn't believe she could bring up such a topic so casually. I ate my meal with a strained face. Every time Wendy said something inappropriate, Walker would step in saying, "Stop it, Mom." He looked exhausted. We both regretted bringing her along, to say the least. For the record, my mom works and doesn't rely on my dad's inheritance for survivor's pension. She seemed taken aback by Wendy's comments, too. Then the topic shifted to the catering I had ordered. So, this is delicious, but how much did it cost? Was it expensive, like $200 or $300? Another tone-deaf comment. Just as I was getting fed up, Wendy suddenly became angry. You know, it's fine to celebrate your mom's 60th birthday, but doing it with Walker's money isn't right. Use your own spending money. What is she talking about all of a sudden? I paid for this catering from my own part-time job earnings. But Wendy wouldn't listen. You can't possibly afford such an expensive meal on your measly salary. She even went as far as to say that. Don't be so cheeky, spending your husband's money like that. Why would she say such a thing during my mom's 60th birthday celebration? I deeply regret bringing Wendy along. I can't forgive her for creating this atmosphere. I was about to lose my patience until Wendy off. When at that moment, all right, let's go Dutch then. We'll split it 4 ways. How does that sound? It was my mom who spoke. What? Everyone was shocked. My mom, who had stayed silent every time Wendy made an outrageous comment, was now suggesting this. What? What? Wait, what are you saying? Going Dutch on a 60th birthday celebration? That's absurd. Wendy was rattled by my mom's words. In response, my mom spoke confidently. Layla has explained multiple times that she paid for this with her own money, right? But Wendy, you wouldn't accept that, insisting it must be Walker's money. So I thought doing Dutch would settle this. Wendy was speechless. My mom continued. Oh, and Wendy, please pay with your own money, not the money left by your late husband. At this, Wendy became furious. What? Why do I have to be told that by you? Facing Wendy's red-faced, flat outburst, my mom responded calmly. Well, you did say, don't indulge in luxuries with your husband's money, didn't you? So it would be wrong to use your late husband's inheritance, right? Fair point. Wendy had nothing to say, but she was so furious that she started to say something ridiculous. Well, it's fine for me, but not for Layla, because Layla is using my precious Walker's hard-earned money. If a wife spends it carelessly, of course a parent would get angry. She's talking nonsense. Walker and I exchanged incredulous glances. I get it. I really do. I'm angry too. I'm frustrated that my dear daughter is being unfairly scolded by Wendy. At this point, Wendy seemed at a loss for words, struggling to come up with a retort. Well, you see. Shuddering and flustered, Wendy was silenced by my mom's next words. Initially, I was going to let it slide, watching you berate Layla. I didn't want to cause any issues in your future living arrangements, but enough is enough. You're the one living lavishly on your husband's money, and you dare tell my daughter not to do the same. Are you kidding me? How can you demean and belittle my daughter in front of me? What would you think if I did the same to Walker right now? Wendy was completely silenced. I never knew my mom could get this angry. Neither Walker nor I could hide our surprise. Wendy, now quiet, seemed regretful and teary-eyed. She grabbed Walker's hand and stood up. Walker, let's go. I can't stay here any longer. For some reason, she tried to leave with Walker. Walker, of course, didn't go with her. He shook off her hand and snapped. How selfish can you be, Mom? Enough is enough. Wendy started to cry. What now? Even you, Walker? Everyone's treating me like the villain. I was thinking of you when. Before she could finish, Walker shouted, cut the crap. What's for my sake? Apologize to Layla right now for ruining the 60th birthday celebration. Wendy was visibly shaken by Walker's fury. He seemed so forceful that it looked like he might hit her. Perhaps because of that, Wendy complied meekly. I'm really sorry. I truly apologize. Wendy offered a heartfelt apology to me and my mom. After all the time she had bossed me around, she was finally apologizing sincerely. So, I thought about forgiving her. Yeah, right. I'm sorry, but I can't put up with Wendy's selfishness anymore. Ruining my mom's 60th birthday celebration made me realize that I can't live with this person any longer. Please. Let's end this living arrangement. With the atmosphere already tense from my mom and Walker confronting Wendy, I unleashed my pent-up anger. That said, I never thought I'd be able to say all this to Wendy. Wendy was shocked when I suggested we should stop living together. She clung to me with a loud voice. Please don't say we should part ways. I'm truly sorry. I messed up today. From now on, I'll take care of myself. It's too late for that now. So, as you've said, take care of yourself in your own home. Also, remember you mentioned not living large on my husband's money? Starting today, you'll need to find a part-time job and earn your own keep. My point was, own up to what you say. Wendy was taken aback. No. That was a mistake. I take it back. I didn't mean that part about not using my husband's money. Walker chimed in, a touch of irony in his voice. So, moving forward, Layla can do whatever she wants with my money, right? Exactly. Wendy was at a loss for words. I was on the verge of bursting into laughter. Everyone blamed her, and she was clearly out of options. Walker didn't hesitate to lay it out straight. Stop depending on my dad's inheritance. Layla and me, we'll separate our living arrangements. And Mom, you need to work. Wendy kept repeating, impossible. Look, Dad's inheritance isn't endless. One day it'll run out. Can you live on just survivor benefits and your own pension? You're not actually planning on depending on my salary, are you? Wendy looked utterly confused. How about working part-time at a subsidiary of my company? Walker made a helpful suggestion. But Wendy kept hesitating, saying, but no. Then I can't help you. We'll move out soon and I'll cut off all contact. Considering recent events and today, I think it's fair. Wendy panicked at Walker's finality. Fine, I get it. I'll do it. Just don't cut me off. And that's how Wendy put an end to her freeloading life. So, the disastrous 60th birthday celebration came to an end. We all apologized to Mom and hurried home to start looking for a new place and packing. As soon as we found a new home, we moved. During this time, Wendy was noticeably more considerate, just like when we started living together. She even started helping with the chores, but that didn't mean we could continue living together. Wendy, please reconsider. I had been saying no every time she asked, trying to make her reflect on her actions. It seemed Wendy was having regrets about her own behavior. Walker, my husband, had a proposal for her to work at his subsidiary company. If you slack off or are late, I'll hear about it. Plus, it's a subsidiary of the company where your son works. If you screw up, it'll reflect badly on me. He figured a reasonable mom would consider. Basically, Walker was taking control until Wendy couldn't mess her life up anymore. He's a tough cookie, I thought. Days later, Walker told Wendy, I spoke to the factory manager at the subsidiary. You have a job interview. With no escape, Wendy reluctantly went to the interview. She got the job and started working 5 days a week. Since she had been so lazy before, work seemed pretty hard and she spent her days off sleeping. As Walker had suspected, her work ethic was quite diligent, lest she ruin her reputation and, by extension, his. Working 5 days a week made her too tired to make a mess at home, which helped keep the household in order. In the midst of all this, she confided, how long will I be stuck like this at my age? Living alone is lonely. If she hadn't been treating me like a slave, everyone could have been happily living by now. By the way, we had to redo the celebration for my mom's 60th birthday, because Wendy had ruined it the first time around. It took some time to save up the money. Of course, Wendy wasn't there. When I proposed to my mom that we redo the 60th birthday celebration, she declined, saying, "I appreciate the thought, but it's too expensive. Your feelings are enough." In that case, I sat and decided to prepare a nice meal at home. We had a delightful 60th birthday celebration redo. My mom was overjoyed and Walker also celebrated with us. "Hey, Layla, you're not drinking." Well, actually, that day, my mom saved me from the unpleasant Wendy. They say motherhood is a strength, and it's true. I've been frustrated and stressed by Wendy, so this event reminded me of how great a mom can be. I want to be a mom who, no matter my age, cherishes her children just like mine.